My next guest works on a wonderful website called worldhum.com. And, we've seen all well, we haven't seen all of them, unless you're really addicted to politics, but many of you have seen the presidential candidate debates for both the Republicans and the Democrats. A number of presidential candidates have already dropped out of the race, but they're still out there going strong. And World Hum has a great piece this week, and Julia Ross is the person who did it, called the 2008 U.S. Presidential Candidate Travel Scorecard. How good are these candidates or as these presidential hopefuls as world travelers? What do they really know about the world that they're supposed to be making policy about? And so we welcome Julia Ross to the show. Hey, Julia.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so what you did in this is apparently you took each candidate, figured out, A, did they even have a passport? B, where have they actually been? What do they really like to do? What do they, what's their basic resume when it comes to travel? Because the rumor is, and I say rumor because I've never gotten a straight answer, and maybe you can tell me this, when George Bush became president in 2001, the rumor was he didn't even have a passport.
Yeah, that I remember hearing about that. I'm not sure that was accurate. I think he did, in fact, visit China at one point when his father was ambassador there. So,
yeah, but that was back in the 70s.
Yeah, but other than that, I'm not sure how much he had traveled before he arrived in Washington.
All right, so let's talk about the candidates who are out there right now. We'll start with the Democrats. You've got, of course, Barack Obama.
Yep.
Tell me about what his travel profile's like.
Yeah, what we did was we took the candidates and we ranked them on a scale of 1 to 5, looking at not only how widely they've traveled, but the kind of travel they've done. How did they travel to learn? Are they interested in diving into the local culture, that kind of thing. So Barack Obama was one of our high scores. We gave him a 4.5 out of 5. As you probably know, he wrote a book a couple years ago that looked at his first trip to Kenya. His father was Kenyan, and it was kind of partly a travel memoir, and he wrote about his experience there, which I really enjoyed.
All right, so he did pretty well.
Yep, he did pretty well.
John Edwards, not so well.
John Edwards, not so well. He's kind of a down-home guy, I think. He served in the Senate, of course, and I think he was on the Senate Intelligence Committee and did some travel, but we said he's kind of more comfortable at home in North Carolina than he would be on the Champs-Élysées.
All right, let's hear it for barbecue. And now we move on to Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Yep, Hillary was the only candidate I found who actually gave a number of countries travel to on her website. And she says she's been to 80 countries. I think mostly while she was First Lady. So we gave her a 4.
All right, so she's got a lot of stamps in the passport.
Yep. Absolutely. And then on the Republican side, we gave a 4.5 to John McCain.
Well, you know why he traveled not necessarily by intention. He was a guest at the Hanoi Hilton
right,
for a few
exactly.
years.
So we thought we'd give him extra credit for that.
All right, now, but wait a second. Let me go back to the Democrats because I want to spend equal amount of time on the Republicans.
Okay.
You've got a lot of other guys now who dropped out. Chris Dodd has dropped out. Bill Richardson's dropped out. Joe Biden's dropped out.
Yeah.
But Biden had to score well.
Yep, he's a longtime chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and has been all over the place, Iraq, Darfur, the Balkans, places like that. So he was a pretty high scorer too.
All right, so when we come back, Julia, stay on the line. I want to talk about McCain a little more. Of course, Rudy Giuliani, Fred Thompson, and of course our friend Mitt Romney and Mike Huckabee.
Okay.
Because they're all out there claiming they've been world travelers. So we'll be coming back to find out the travel scorecard of the Republican candidates when we're back with Peter Greenberg Worldwide. 52 minutes after the hour here on Peter Greenberg Worldwide. We've been talking to Julia Ross from worldhum.com on their great presidential candidate travel profile. We talked about the Democrats, both Hillary and Barack Obama scoring pretty well on that travel scorecard. John Edwards, not too high. We're going to move over to the Republicans now. Julia, let's start with John McCain. We mentioned him briefly in the last segment, but he does have a pretty high travel scorecard, doesn't he?
Yeah, we gave him a 4.5. As I said, he spent 5.5 years at the Hanoi Hilton, as you mentioned. So we thought we'd give him extra points for that. And, of course, he's done a lot of travel over his years in the Senate, visiting the troops, that kind of thing.
All right, so he's been around. What about our friend Mr. Mitt Romney?
Mitt Romney, turns out he spent a couple years as a Mormon missionary when he was a young man in France. And, of course, he was the chairman of the Salt Lake City Olympic Games. So he's done a lot of Olympic-related travel. So we gave him a 3.5.
All right, so these guys actually have passports. What a surprise. Okay, Mike Huckabee.
Mike Huckabee was a little bit of a surprise. On his website, he touts extensive travel in the Middle East over about 30 years, and it turns out he's been to Israel 9 times. So I was a little surprised at that one.
Well, he's a former Baptist minister, and
Yep.
I'm sure some of these were religious missions, so he could probably be a great tour guide in the Holy City.
Exactly.
Okay, and now, of course, Rudy Giuliani, of course, who probably knows New York better than anybody, and some people actually think you need a passport to go to New York, but what about his travel profile?
Yeah, I didn't find a whole lot on Rudy Giuliani. Apparently when he was mayor, he had the reputation of never taking a vacation. But he has traveled at least to the UK a couple times. We ended up giving him a pretty low score. We gave him a 2 out of 5.
But he has been on the New York City subway system, which means he's an international traveler just by doing that.
Probably, yes.
He's immersed himself in at least 40 cultures just by taking the IRT.
That would be his argument, I'm sure.
I'm sure. And Fred Thompson, how does he rate?
Fred Thompson, didn't find a whole lot of travel information on him either. We said his dream destination was the Hollywood Walk of Fame, of course, because he's an actor. And I'm sure he spent a lot of time in Nashville. He's from Tennessee. But in terms of international travel, not a lot of information on him.
Okay, so the big winners here on the Republican side are McCain, Huckabee, and Romney.
Yep, and actually Alan Keyes, and I don't know whether he's still in the race officially or not. He was a little bit of a surprise. It turns out he was an Army brat as a kid and studied in Paris as a college student and then went into the Foreign Service. So he's quite
here's the good
well-traveled.
news. Here's the good news. If he's not in the race, think how much more time he has now to travel.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Julia Ross, you can find all of this on World Hum, that's HUM, worldhum.com, the 2008 U.S. presidential candidate travel scorecard. Of course, the only travel these guys ever really want to do right now is to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Of course, we'll